Imagine coming home to find armed men sent by your HOA, ready to enforce their petty rules, only for your wife, a Green Beret sniper, to turn the tables in a way they never saw coming. This is a wild tale of defiance, strategy, and one couple stand against an overreaching HOA, and you won't believe how it unfolds. Stick around for a story that's equal parts thrilling and satisfying. If you love HOA drama, Karen meltdowns, and epic comeuppances, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and drop a like. Share this with your friends who've had their own run-ins with nosy neighbors or power-hungry HOAs. Let's dive into this insane story of a couple who took on their HOA and won in the most unexpected way. The sun dipped low over the manicured lawns of Willow Creek, a suburban enclave where every blade of grass seemed to bow to the iron rule of the Homeowners Association. Tom and Lena Harper had moved here 6 months ago, drawn by the promise of quiet streets and a fresh start after years of military life. Their modest 2-story home, with its neatly trimmed hedges and freshly painted shutters, blended seamlessly into the neighborhood's cookie-cutter aesthetic. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. The HOA, led by the indomitable Barbara Clean, had a reputation for wielding its rulebook like a scepter, and the Harpers were about to become its latest target. Tom, a retired logistics officer, and Lena, a former Green Beret sniper who now worked as a private security consultant, were no strangers to conflict. They'd faced worse than clipboard-wielding busybodies in their time overseas, but they hadn't anticipated the HOA's relentless scrutiny. It started small. A warning about their mailbox, which was half an inch too tall, then a citation for a garden gnome deemed inappropriate by Barbara's personal taste. Lena, with her sharp eyes and sharper instincts, saw these for what they were: petty power plays. She complied at first, not wanting to stir trouble, but each new rule tightened a coil of frustration in her chest. Tom, ever the peacemaker, urged patience, but even he was growing weary of the HOA's micromanagement. The tipping point came on a crisp October morning when a certified letter arrived demanding the removal of their backyard shed. The shed, a small, unassuming structure where Lena stored her camping gear, had been approved by the previous HOA board. But Barbara, newly elected and eager to flex her authority, claimed it violated an obscure bylaw about visual harmony. The letter gave them 48 hours to comply or face escalated enforcement measures. Lena's jaw tightened as she read the words, her training kicking in, assessing the threat. She wasn't about to let a suburban dictator dismantle her property. Tom, sensing her resolve, knew better than to argue. The Harpers weren't ones to back down, but they also weren't reckless. Lena spent the evening reviewing the HOA bylaws, her mind working like a battlefield strategist. The rules were vague, deliberately so, giving Barbara's board unchecked power. By midnight, Lena had a plan, not one of compliance, but of resistance. She didn't share the details with Tom yet, only asking him to trust her. He did implicitly. The next day, the neighborhood buzzed with whispers of the Harpers' defiance. Barbara, flanked by her loyal secretary, Doris, marched to their doorstep with a clipboard and a smug grin, expecting capitulation. Instead, Lena greeted her with a calm, unyielding stare, informing her that the shed wasn't going anywhere until the HOA clarified its escalated measures. Barbara's face wrined, unused to push back, and she stormed off, muttering about consequences. That night, Lena sat in the darkened living room, her sniper's patience guiding her thoughts. She knew Barbara wouldn't stop at letters or visits. The HOA had a history of hiring private security to intimidate non-compliant residents, a tactic whispered about in neighborhood gossip. Lena wasn't afraid, but she was prepared. She checked her gear, binoculars, a small surveillance drone, and her old service rifle locked securely but accessible. Tom watched her with quiet pride, knowing his wife was a force of nature. The 48-hour deadline loomed, and the air in Willow Creek grew thick with tension. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, sensing a showdown. Lena, ever the tactician, waited for the HOA's next move. Her instincts honed from years in high-stakes missions. She didn't have to wait long. The morning of the deadline broke with an eerie calm, the kind that precedes a storm. Lena was up before dawn, her movements precise as she set up discreet vantage points around the property. She'd rigged motion sensors near the shed and placed a small camera in a tree, feeding live footage to her laptop. Tom, though not a combatant, played his part, keeping the neighbors distracted with casual conversation at the community mailbox. By noon, a black SUV rolled into Willow Creek, its tinted windows glinting under the autumn sun. Two men stepped out, dressed in tactical vests and carrying sidearms, their presence screaming hired muscle. The HOA had indeed escalated, sending armed enforcers to inspect the Harpers' property. Lena, watching from her upstairs window, felt a familiar calm settle over her. The same focus that had guided her through desert ambushes and urban The men, unaware they were being observed, approached the shed with bolt cutters, clearly intending to dismantle it by force. Lena's drone hummed softly overhead, capturing every move. She noted their sloppy posture, the way they scanned the yard without checking their 6 amateurs in her expert eyes, moving silently. She slipped into the backyard, blending into the shadows of the oak trees. Her rifle remained locked away. This wasn't a war zone, and she wasn't looking to escalate to lethal force. Instead, she relied on her training in psychological operations. Using a handheld speaker, she projected her voice from a hidden position, low and commanding. "You're on private property. Drop the tools and leave." The men froze, startled, their hands hovering near their holsters. They hadn't expected resistance, let alone a voice that seemed to come from nowhere. Lena crouched behind a low wall, watched their confusion through her binoculars. One of them, the taller one with a buzz cut, shouted back, demanding to see the homeowner. Lena didn't respond, letting the silence unnerve them. She activated a second speaker, this one near the shed, repeating the warning. The men spun disoriented, their confidence eroding. Neighbors now openly watching from their porches added to the pressure. Lena's drone buzzed closer, its camera lens glinting, making the men feel exposed. They weren't trained for this. Intimidation was their game, not counter ambushes. After a tense standoff, the taller man muttered something to his partner, and they retreated to their SUV, peeling out of the neighborhood. Lena didn't celebrate. She knew this was only a skirmish. Barbara wouldn't let this go, and the HOA's next move would be bolder. She returned inside, where Tom waited, his face a mix of relief and amusement. They reviewed the drone footage documenting the men's license plate and vests, evidence of the HOA's overreach. Lena sent an email to the HOA board, attaching stills from the video and a formal demand for a public meeting to address their unlawful tactics. The email was polite but firm, a gauntlet thrown down. By evening, the neighborhood's online forum exploded with speculation. Some praising the Harpers' stand, others decrying their defiance as a threat to community order. Barbara, humiliated by the failed enforcement, spent the night drafting a response, her fury palpable even through her carefully worded message. She called an emergency HOA meeting for the following week, intending to rally support and crush the Harpers' rebellion. Lena, reading the announcement, saw it for what it was, a battlefield being prepared. She wasn't intimidated. If Barbara wanted a war, Lena was ready to fight it on her own terms. The week leading to the HOA meeting crackled with anticipation. Willow Creek had become a divided camp, with some residents quietly rooting for the Harpers and others rallying behind Barbara's vision of rigid control. Lena spent the days preparing not with weapons but with strategy. She and Tom canvassed the neighborhood, sharing their drone footage with sympathetic residents and gathering signatures for a petition to reform the HOA's bylaws. Lena's military precision shone through. Every conversation was calculated, every ally chosen for their influence. She uncovered dirt on Barbara, too. Whispers of favoritism, like how her cousin's unapproved deck mysteriously escaped scrutiny. By the meeting night, the community center was packed, the air thick with tension. Barbara stood at the podium, her face a mask of righteous indignation, ready to paint the Harpers as renegades. But Lena had anticipated this. She'd prepared a presentation, projecting the drone footage onto a screen for all to see. The crowd gasped as the armed men appeared, their aggressive postures undeniable. Lena, calm and authoritative, narrated the events, framing the HOA's actions as an abuse of power. She cited bylaws, state laws, and even HOA insurance policies, dismantling Barbara's authority with surgical precision. The room shifted, murmurs of discontent rippling through the crowd. Barbara, caught off guard, stammered through a weak defense, claiming the men were routine inspectors. The lie fell flat. The footage was damning. By the meeting's end, a vote was called, not just on the shed, but on Barbara's leadership.